This is your home for worship and the word, K-Wave 107.9. I'm Brian Perez, and we are here, night number 2 of the, 26th annual SoCal Harvest at Angel Stadium in Anaheim.
That's right.
I'm Brian Perez. I'm joined by Robert Baltodano and our guest, the one and only Lacey Sturm.
Hello.
How are
Lacey.
you?
I'm so excited to be here. Actually, we did our sound check earlier, and it was really just like a dream. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was just, the sound was so phenomenal.
Really?
Never heard anything. I've toured all over the place and played in all kinds of venues.
Now, you starting tonight?
I am starting. Yes.
You are? Wow.
First thing will be us.
Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about your past before you became a Christian.
Okay.
One of the things that kind of stood out to me was that you were an outspoken atheist.
Yes. Very rude.
Talk a little bit about that.
atheist.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I just was offended at the idea of. So I grew up, and my mom was a Christian. She always talked to me about God. We struggled financially. My single mom with 6 kids. It's hard. And if we hadn't, anytime we needed something, and nobody was there for us, she would say, "God's going to take care of us," and He would. So I believed when I was younger. But by the time I was 10, I had a tragedy happen in our family where my little cousin who lived with us, his mom was a teen mom, and she had lived with us, and when she had him for 3 years, and then she married a man, moved off, and shortly after that man beat my cousin to death, and he was only 3. And I just remember thinking, I thought God was supposed to take care of us. What happened with that? And just decided that I didn't believe in God. And also, there was a couple things. One was that I don't think I knew how to mourn really well at that point, and I just decided I was going to be sad for him always as a kind of a loyalty to his death. And so there was like a talking myself into being sad whenever, like, I didn't feel like it was right to be happy, and so I kind of hated happy people. I just thought you're either naive or sick and messed up if you can be happy in a world where kids get beaten to death. Like, I just didn't like happy people, and then anytime you talk about God, it would make me angry because I would just be like, it's just messed up to teach people that God's going to take care of you when bad things happen. And I was just very hateful.
So you were more mad at God than you were that you were like believing that there was no God. You were just mad at God. You think?
Well, I didn't. I was mad at people for telling people there's a God. Okay. When bad things happen and there was no answers for that. Right. And even in my search, I wished that there would have been a God. Back then I mean, in my head I thought, well, sure, it'd be nice if there was a God, but it's hateful to tell people there is when there's not. And like for me to see, just to want what I want, what you have to figure out is that you have to be your own God in the end. If there's no God, then you have to be your own God, and we just turn out to be really poor gods, because you can't be God for somebody, and you feel like you have to save the world, and even that doesn't work,
And that just basically led you to a really bad path, right? Drugs,
right?
Suicide.
Well, if you don't have a God to answer to, you kind of make up your own rules about what's right and wrong, and you try to get what you can out of life, because after that, there's nothing. So the thing is, so you try to find your own purpose, and there's really no purpose. And if you can't find happiness, then what's the point of keep going? And so I just, I couldn't ever find that in a genuine way. And
No, I was just going to say, as you were growing up, little kid, you saw the goodness of God. You saw God provide for you. And that's so like us even now. Years later, we see the goodness of God. God comes through time after time after time. And then one thing goes wrong. And it's, and this was a major thing that happened with your little cousin. But a lot of times we just have that mentality of, oh, see, I knew it. It just, God just, again, it happened.
Yeah.
So how do we explain that to people who, they're just always looking, it's almost like they're looking for an excuse to not believe in God.
Now, that's a really good point, because when I wrote my book, which my book's called The Reason, I wrote it a couple years ago. It came out last year. And as I'm going through the journey of writing this book, it was so healing, because I noticed over and over again things that I didn't notice when I was younger, how God did still continue to provide people to take care of us. He did still continue to provide people to help heal my heart. I remember the day I did have an encounter with God, one of the comments that the man that prayed for me said was, he said, God has seen you when you cry yourself to sleep at night. And this was something he knew supernaturally. He couldn't have known that I did that every night since I was little. And he said, God has seen you when you cry yourself to sleep at night. And when he said that, all of a sudden I realized, I saw all those moments in my head. I just, as a culmination of like, yeah, that was the loneliest part of my day. And you're saying God saw me. And the thing that hit me was that God was with me when I cried, even if I didn't see him, and it was him who put me to sleep. Because if it's not the rehearsing your sadness that makes you go to sleep, it's him being there and saying, that's enough, you need rest.
Wow.
You know, to just realize he was with you, even when we don't see him. And it's such a grace that I could say with the breath he gave me, I don't believe in God, and the only reason I'm existing is because he's giving me breath and another day. And he's just has such grace, you know, to just keep us living, even when we don't acknowledge him.
You have an amazing testimony, Lacey. One of the things that I remember hearing is that man that you're speaking about, that knew, you know, what was happening, he was an older gentleman, wasn't he? And a lot of times we seem to think that, no, it should be the younger people that are reaching the younger people because, you know, we're all on the same wavelength. We need to only reach those in our demographic. But here was somebody who was older than you, who was able to comfort you in your time.
Yeah, I really think it's one of the biggest robberies that we have in our generation is that we don't honor people who are older than us. That's not held in honor. And I learned it later in life, but that's true what you said. It's somebody I would have never noticed. You know, I don't have any older people in my family. My mom was 16 when she had me. My grandma was also a teenager when she had her. So there was no older people in my family. I didn't know how to relate to them. I figured they'd all judging me. But what was so beautiful is that he looked at me with a purity of a love I never knew. I never knew in my life from a stranger. And it was shocking. And it really did. And he had a boldness as an older person to not care what anybody thought. And he risked being embarrassed, which he wouldn't, to say something he couldn't have known.
Right.
You know, like God has seen you and you cry yourself to sleep at night. He also said, even though you've never known an earthly father, that God will be a better father to you than any earthly father could ever be. And there were some other things he said. You've been rehearsing your pain, but Jesus died on a cross to take that pain out of your heart that you've been rehearsing, and he doesn't want you to live with it and carry it.
Wow.
And those were like things he couldn't really know. It was something that the Lord was revealing to him, and it had to be supernatural for me because I wouldn't have believed in a gospel about it without the power to like prove it to me, kind of like Thomas, I guess. And God is so gracious to give us what we need when we really are searching for truth.
Yeah.
And that day, I had come up so short of finding any truth in any direction and really wanted truth. And that's what I culminated into. If there's nothing besides this, I'm tired of doing it. I don't want to do it anymore.
So your book that you wrote, Revelations of a Rock Princess. So that book pretty much reveals your story, your testimony. How has that book, encouraged other young people?
Wow. Well, when I left the band Flyleaf, the biggest concern I had was the kids who really connected with the heart behind it, and that really wanted to know this really healed something in me, and I want to keep connected with whatever that was that healed that in me. And I'll say we prayed for every song we wrote, all the CDs, the shows. We prayed that the Holy Spirit would fill that music and speak what only he could speak. And a lot of people would say, I don't know what it was when I was at your show, something was different and I felt hope, or I felt healed, or I felt like there was a God, and I've never believed in God. You know, they would say weird things like that. And so I just wanted to connect with them, and I wanted to tell my story, because I know that kids, you know, I can only get a few minutes with kids at a time, or the people who like the music, not just kids, obviously.
Right.
But and so if I could give them a book and share some of the things that I went through, then maybe that would connect with them even deeper. And it has. This is exactly what I've heard. You know, I read your book in one night, or I just related to it so much. It taught me so much. And there was one particular girl I had in mind while I wrote the book, and her email to me was, after she read it, was everything I was intending. You know, she caught on to the fact that we can wallow in self-pity, and it can steal our lives, and it's totally unhealthy, and it seems beautiful because it's dark, but it's so destructive to everything good that we're meant to live. And there's so
Wow.
much beauty out there we're missing
Right.
to
right.
like rejoice in.
Yeah. So
Huh.
not. Would you say something? No, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say now. Let's fast forward to harvest. You're here. Is this your
Yeah.
first time?
This is my first time with Harvest.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How cool. Looking
I've
forward to
never
it.
even been in it, like to be in Angel Stadium. It's the first time I've ever
Yeah.
been in a baseball stadium, except for once back in Arlington, Texas, when first Ranger Stadium before they did the second one. I was there, but that's it.
Well, you're going to love Angel Stadium. It's the best
It's
baseball stadium
cool.
out there.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Uh-huh.
I'm so excited.
How can people find out more about your book and your music and everything
I
else?
have
What's
a
the best place?
website, LaceySturm.com.
And Sturm is spelled
Sturm. It's like
with a U, not an
storm
E.
with a U.
I like that. Like storm, but with a U.
Yeah,
Sturm.
And if you want to hear more about Lacey's testimony, tonight, everybody, on the Live with Ryan Reese program at 9 o'clock, you can tune in and you will be able to hear Lacey's testimony. So as you're driving away from Angel Stadium, tune in, KWave 107.9, and you'll be able to hear the entire story. And it's just a phenomenal testimony that you have, Lacey.
Yes.
Thank you,
absolutely.
God.
Yeah. God bless you tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
definitely.
It's
gonna
Thanks
be
for being with
exciting.
us.
Guys.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have fun.
All right. This is Brian and Robert down at Angel Stadium at KWave 107.9.